Hey everyone, welcome back to VOXQUEU. Today we've got some wild ones. Grab a drink, settle in, and let's get into it. There's something about people being absolutely sure they're right that makes them push just a little too far, and most of the time it works for them. Until it doesn't, and that's when everything falls apart. The first story started with something that should have been simple: a backyard, a fence line, a quiet neighborhood where nobody really bothered each other. That was the setup Ruby thought she was moving into. For the first few weeks, everything was normal. People waved, kids rode bikes, it felt easy. Then Trevor showed up at her door. Trevor was the HOA president, the kind of guy who smiled while telling you that you were wrong. He stood there, hands folded, looking past Ruby into her house like he already owned the place. He told her, calmly, that part of her backyard wasn't actually hers. Ruby laughed at first. She thought it was a joke. It wasn't. Trevor pointed toward the fence line and said, "That strip along the side, that belongs to me. Always has." And this is where it gets worse. Ruby had family coming that weekend. People were already on their way. She didn't have time for this, so she tried to keep it simple. "I bought the house with the property line marked. It's in the paperwork." Trevor just smiled. Paperwork can be wrong. That should have been the end, but it wasn't. Over the next 2 days, Trevor escalated. He started walking along that side of the yard like it was his. At one point, Ruby caught him moving a small garden marker she had placed. Neighbors started watching. Nobody said anything, and somehow he still thought he could talk his way out of it. By the time Ruby's family arrived, the tension was already there. You could feel it in the air. Conversations paused when Trevor walked by. People glanced at the fence. That was the moment everything cracked. Trevor showed up again, this time louder. "I'm giving you a chance to fix this before the HOA gets involved." Ruby didn't argue. She just nodded and said, "Okay." Here's what he didn't expect. The next morning, bright orange markers appeared along the property line. Clean, precise, impossible to ignore. A city inspection team stood near the fence with clipboards, measuring, talking quietly. Trevor came out halfway through, confused at first, then annoyed, then suddenly very quiet. Ruby stood near the back door, arms crossed. One of the inspectors turned to Trevor and said, "Sir, this boundary has been verified. You're standing on her property." Silence. You could feel the entire block watching. Trevor tried to speak, but nothing really came out. His confidence just disappeared. And just like that, it was over. He stopped showing up, stopped walking the line. The fence stayed exactly where it was, and Ruby didn't say anything else about it, because she didn't have to. The second story feels smaller at first, but it builds in a way that's hard to ignore. Casey had been dealing with missing packages for weeks. Not every delivery, just enough to feel intentional. At first, they blamed the delivery service, then timing, then bad luck. But the pattern kept repeating. That was the moment everything shifted. Luke, the roommate, always seemed to be around when something went missing. Not obviously, not enough to accuse him, just enough to make it uncomfortable. And this is where it gets worse. Casey started ordering things they didn't even need. Small stuff, cheap items, just to track the pattern. And every time, something disappeared. The apartment started to feel different, quieter, tighter, like everyone was waiting for something to break. One night, Casey said out loud, "It's weird how things only go missing when certain people are home." Luke laughed, too quickly. "What are you trying to say?" Casey shrugged. "Nothing." But it wasn't nothing. Here's what they didn't expect. Casey installed a small kitchen camera. Nothing obvious, just positioned enough to catch the entryway and the counter where packages usually landed. Then they waited. 3 days later, it happened again. A package arrived. Casey left it on the counter and walked out. The apartment was silent. Then Luke walked in. He looked around first. That's what made it undeniable. Not panic, not hesitation, just checking. Then he picked up the package, opened it, looked inside, and slid it into his bag. That was the moment everything cracked. When Casey came back, they didn't say anything right away. They just sat down across from Luke. "Did you see my package?" Luke didn't even blink. "No." Casey pulled out their phone, played the video. The room went cold. Luke stared at the screen, then at Casey, then back at the screen. "You went through all that just to catch me?" And somehow he still thought he could talk his way out of it. Casey leaned forward slightly. "No, you did all that to get caught." Silence. There was no argument after that, no explanation that made sense. Luke moved out within a week, and the packages stopped disappearing. The third story is the one that really shows how far people are willing to push when they think nobody will challenge them. Logan had one driveway space, just one, and during holidays, that space mattered. It was packed that weekend, cars everywhere, people squeezing into spots that barely existed. That's when Derek showed up. Derek had the kind of energy that filled space before he even said anything. Loud, confident, completely sure he was in the right. He pulled into Logan's driveway like it was already his. Logan stepped outside immediately. "Hey, that's my spot." Derek didn't move, didn't even turn the engine off for a bit. "We're just going to be here for a bit." And this is where it gets worse. Logan pointed to the clearly marked space. "It's assigned." Derek laughed. "It's a driveway, relax." People nearby started watching. Conversation slowed. That should have been the end, but it wasn't. Derek got out of the car and waved toward his family like he had just secured something important. "We'll be quick," he said, already walking away. That was the moment everything cracked. Logan didn't argue, didn't raise his voice, just pulled out his phone. "All right?" Here's what he didn't expect. The building had a parking system, quiet, digital, every assigned space logged, every access tracked. Logan reported the unauthorized use. Minutes later, a notification hit, then another. A staff member walked over holding a tablet. "Is this your vehicle?" they asked Derek. Derek turned, still smiling. "Yeah." The staff member rotated the screen slightly. The lot log, time-stamped, entry recorded, unauthorized use flagged. The smile faded. And somehow he still thought he could talk his way out of it. "We were just here for a bit." The staff member didn't react. "You'll need to move the vehicle immediately." Silence. People were watching again, but this time it felt different. Derek walked back to the car without saying another word. And just like that, it was over. What all of these three stories have in common is something people don't like to admit. Confidence without proof works until it meets reality. Trevor believed the neighborhood would back him up. He relied on presence and pressure. But the moment actual measurement showed up, everything collapsed. Luke relied on subtlety, on the idea that suspicion isn't enough. But once there was a recording, there was no space left to hide. Derek relied on boldness, on acting like something was already his. But systems don't respond to confidence, they respond to facts. And that's the pattern. People push when they think nobody will challenge them. They escalate when nobody stops them early. They build their own version of reality and expect others to accept it. But proof changes everything. It doesn't argue, it doesn't get emotional, it just exists. And once it shows up, the room changes. You can feel it. Conversations stop, people shift, the energy drops. Because suddenly, it's not about who's louder or more confident, it's about what's real. And in every one of these situations, the moment proof appeared, everything else disappeared with it. That's why the fallout always feels so final. There's no recovery from being clearly wrong in front of everyone. And that's the part people never think about when they start pushing. They think about winning. They don't think about what happens when they're exposed. And by the time that moment comes, it's already too late. So, if there's one thing to take from all of this, it's simple. Confidence can carry you for a while, but proof ends the story. And once that happens, there's no talking your way out of it. All right, that's going to do it for today. If you've ever seen something like this play out in real life, you already know how quickly things can turn once the truth shows up. And if you haven't, just give it time. Because moments like these don't stay hidden forever. And when they surface,
They tend to bring everything with them. I'll see you in the next one.